attendees. I'm Grace Preuss, a member of the worship committee, and I will be your worship associate today. We welcome you to join us this morning with an open mind and an open heart, and with muted electronic devices, please. We invite you to leave your worries and defenses at the door and trust that what happens in worship is inspiring and powerful. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser as we begin a new day and a new week. Although our doors are open, the pandemic is not over. So while we are here, please keep your masks on and socially distance. We can speak in normal tones, but singing or chanting creates an increased risk of airborne exposure. So we please ask you to refrain from singing for the time being. We invite those of you in the sanctuary to sit back and enjoy listening to our hymns. For those of you at home, sing your hearts out. And now I invite you to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. For our call to worship, you are welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. Dr. Morgan Scott Peck was born in New York in 1936. He attended Phillips Exeter Academy, but was expelled for refusing to attend mandatory ROTC sessions. He transferred to Harvard, where he received a bachelor's degree in 1958, and received a medical degree in 1963 from Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. Dr. Peck is among the founding fathers of the self-help genre of books. The Road Less Traveled, published in 1978, and its later companion volumes have sold more than 5 million copies in North America and have been translated into more than 20 languages. Alec Peck has been a practicing UU for 23 years, raised in a UU church chosen by his father, who was raised Quaker, and mother raised Jewish, though both are humanist in praxis. Alec has studied natural science at Creighton University, a Jesuit institution, and is now completing his PhD at UC Riverside while serving as chair of the worship committee here at UCR. As a teenager coming of age in a UU church, Alec's mentor gave him the book, The Road Less Traveled, from the church library to read. Since then, this book has been a strong influence on how he views and approaches spiritual growth. Today's sermon is called The Road Less Traveled, Discipline. Life, even in 2021, or maybe especially in 2021, can be difficult. The spiritual journey is one built on the pain of confronting difficult challenges. In short, discipline is the practice of confronting spiritual challenges. But what exactly is self-discipline, and how can we actually apply it? M. Scott Peck claims that there are 4 elements of discipline: delay of gratification, acceptance of responsibility, dedication to truth, and balance. By embracing discipline, we can encourage spiritual growth within ourselves and each other. We have 2 lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred place of several groups of Indigenous peoples, including the Cahuilla, the Cupeño, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light this sacred flame as the stewards of this sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together.
Come on, arson usually comes easy.
Thank you, Bill. Now for our chalice lighting. Today's reading of the chalice lighting is "Blessed is the Fire That Burns Deep in the Soul" by Eric A. Heller-Wagner. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life. Our opening hymn this morning is "There Is More Love Somewhere." For those in the sanctuary, please sit back and enjoy the hymn, but please do not sing along.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
This portion of our service is called Greeting Our Guests. We have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others, and so now I will ask for a volunteer from someone who has been here a while to tell us your name and how you found out about our church. We ask you to come up to the mic here and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. Do we have a volunteer? Okay.
Hi, I'm Gio. I came here a few years ago because, thank you. I'm very religious, although I'm not exactly sure what religion I am. So this I thought was a good place, and then I met Grace, and she's my best friend, and yeah. So stay here, man. It's a cool place, very cool place. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. And that's how it's done. If you are new here, a visitor, or an old friend, please raise your hand to stand and come up to the mic in front of the pulpit. Please let us know who you are, where you are from, and how you found out about us. Any takers?
Hi, my name is Briar. I came here today from the University of Redlands. I found out about this church from the director of outdoor programs at my school. Her name is Bree. She came here once and she said that it was a really nice experience and that I should come. So I came with my friends. And I'm glad to be here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Briar. Thank you all for coming. Welcome. Anyone else would like to speak? If there's someone online who would like to introduce themselves, please raise your hand and we will call on you. For our new guests, our visitors book in the parish hall is there for you to leave your name before you leave so that we know you are here, and your contact information if you would like to know more about our upcoming events. For those online, the best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. Now there are a few announcements that we would like to share. During the service, we will mention several websites, email addresses, and phone numbers. At the end of the service, we will leave up a slide with all of this information, and it is available on our website as well. The UUCR newsletter. I believe it's every other month, right, Kate? Every other month? Okay. So the new UUCR newsletter comes out the first of every other month by email and per request by postal mail. If you have something newsworthy or that you would like to contribute, please email uuchurchofriverside.calendar@gmail.com or call the church office at 951-686-6515. If you would like to be added to our mailing list, please contact the church office. In lieu of our first Sunday lunch today, please support the alternative gift fair at the First United Methodist Church on Brockton. We invite you to do a little holiday shopping for a good cause at the alternative gift fair. As I said, it is being held at the First United Methodist Church at 4845 Brockton Avenue in Riverside from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. today. This is an annual tradition in Riverside, and there are many booths, including 10,000 villagers, crafts by the United Methodist Women, jewelry and cards from Temple Bethel, plus music, soup, and family fun. The idea is to raise money for good causes while getting the holiday shopping done. A flyer with this information is posted on the bulletin board in the parish hall. So if you're interested, we hope to see all of you there. The Concerned UUs of Riverside, or CURE, the community outreach arm of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, will be meeting in the social justice room on the second floor of the annex today at noon. You can find more information on the website under Social and Environmental Justice. Our next hymn is Blue Boat Home.
Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the light of the heavens in a beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, and the great winds urging me on. Read the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port I have known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
It is said that shared joy is a double joy. Shared sorrow is half sorrow. On the first Sunday of each month, we share the joys and concerns that we have received from you and which you have collected throughout the month. First, we'll see if there's any joys and concerns on the book in front of our pulpit. Okay, so we have a concern from our friend Margaret. My finals week is here and I must defeat it. It will be hard, I know, and my code will be buggy and rough, but I'll get there. Heaven knows how, but I will get there. And I know I will. Thank you for that, Margaret. We wish you luck. I have a joy and a concern, which I'll read. My joy is remembering that as much as we are at the center of our own lives, we are equally a part of the greater human collective. I also have a concern. It's remembering that as much as we are at the center of our own lives, we are equally a part of the greater human collective. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to share a joy or concern? Bill? Do you want to come on?
In times past, I've seen the holidays come with a mixture of joy and sorrow, I guess. The joy would be that some of the most beautiful music in Christendom is written for these times. The sorrow is that the faith that I grew up with no longer quite fits. So it leaves one feeling an orphan at one of the more inclusive times of the year. My joy is that, though you wouldn't guess it by my voice right now, that I've largely gotten better on that. My concern is that there are some people who walk in very deep shadow at this time of year. It is a real thing. If you see somebody with a bad case of the holiday blues, for God's sakes, rattle them, shake them, make them laugh, do something. Because we do not walk alone.
Thank you, Bill. Alec?
I have a joy that I'd like to share. a simple joy. I'm just joyful that it is December and therefore, in my opinion, appropriately a Christmassy time of year. And therefore that means I'm happy for that for two reasons. I have been having an urge to listen to some Christmas music. And also, I've ran out of British Bake Off episodes to watch, and I only have the Christmas seasons left to watch. And of course, it'd be really weird to watch those at any other time of year. So it's very well timed for that reason.
Thank you, Alec. Is there anyone else here who'd like to share a joy or a concern? Gianni?
Hello. I'm not homeless right now. I'm not in rehab. I'm not in any other strange facility with strange people. I am living with other addicts who are trying to stay clean. I'm several months off of hard drugs. So yeah, thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Is there anyone online who would like to speak to a joy or concern? No? Okay, last call. Anyone? Oh. Okay, yes, there's a chat from Dinah Rowe to everyone. We have, it disappeared. Chat. Thank you. Dinah Rowe says, we have just had the birth of our first great-great-grandchild. Congratulations. Okay, so now we place a stone in our water chalice to represent the joys, and then we place another one to represent the concerns we have shared with our church community and in recognition of those we hold close and have not shared.
Smooth for the joy, but happens when life seems to actually work. Bit rough around the edges, but sometimes that's when things get me down with the holidays. And a mixture, hopefully not walk solid. Times when we can't unwrap ourselves from joy. And for those, that 18 moment in the middle of the night, ask, what is this? And go accept.
Thank you, Bill. May we remember those who have spoken, those they have named, and those we hold in silence in our hearts. This portion of our service is called Sharing Our Treasure. It is to support our beloved historical church, which can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is on the church website and also in the newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater Brothers grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. You will get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage. Amazon cards are also available. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity. And to those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Will our ushers now please come forth to receive the collection? Thank you. Our next hymn is From You I Receive. Please sit back and enjoy quietly.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Our meditation today is Be the Blessing You Already Are by John and Sarah Gibb Millspawn. In our religious tradition, it is not just ministers and religious professionals who have power to bless. Each of us has the power to bless another and to bless the world. Therefore, I invite everyone here to participate in this blessing by closing your eyes and reaching out to each other in our thoughts. The words are ordinary words, but we make the blessing real through our shared intention. As we have been blessed, so we bless one another to be a blessing. Breathe in, breathe out. This breath we share with all that breathes. Feel the love of the universe flowing through this community into you and out into the universe again. Let the love of all the universe, your love, flow outward to its height, its depth, its broad extent. You are more than you know, and more beloved than you know. Take up what power is yours to create a safe haven, to make the earth a heaven. Give hope to those you encounter, that they may know safety from inner and outer harm. Be happy and at peace, healthy and strong, caring and joyful. Be the blessing you already are. That is enough. Blessed be. Amen. Now let us pause for a moment of silence. Now, I would like to introduce Alec Peck, speaking to us on the road less traveled, discipline.
I do think it was very inspired by Robert Frost. Thank you, Grace. So I'll quickly also mention that, as far as I know, I'm not related to Mr. M. Scott Peck, although I learned while I was writing up the sermon description that he was born in New York, so it makes me just a little tempted to look into it. But anyway, I'll be reading a few select passages from the first chapter of M. Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. That first title is the first chapter is titled Discipline, and the sections we're reading today outline discipline's basic building blocks. I really enjoyed this book the first time I read it, and every time I do, each section seems to be somehow relevant to my life. Perhaps if you enjoy it too, we can hear more excerpts in the future. But first, I'll start with M. Scott Peck's preface, which is told in the first person from his perspective. The ideas herein presented stem, for the most part, from my day-to-day clinical work with patients as they struggle to avoid or gain even greater levels of maturity. Consequently, this book contains portions of many actual case histories. Confidentiality is essential to psychiatric practice, and all descriptions, therefore, have been altered in name and in other particulars as to preserve the anonymity of my patients without distorting the essential reality of our experience with another. As a psychiatrist, I feel it's important to mention on the outset two assumptions that underline this book. One is that I make no distinction between the mind and the spirit, therefore no distinction between the process of achieving spiritual growth and achieving mental growth. They are one in the same. The other assumption is that this process is a complex, arduous, and lifelong task. I do not belong to any particular school of psychiatry or psychotherapy. I am not simply a Freudian or Jungian or Alderian or behaviorist or a gestaltist. I do not believe that there are simple, easy answers. I believe that brief forms of psychotherapy may be helpful and are not to be decried, but the help they provide is inevitably superficial. Life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. The first of the Four Noble Truths, which Buddha taught, was life is suffering. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it. Once we know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult. Because once we accept it, the fact that it is difficult no longer matters. Most do not fully see that the truth that life is difficult. Instead, they moan, more or less incessantly, noisily or subtly, about the enormities of their problems, their burdens, their life's difficulties, as if life were generally easy, as if life should be easy. They voice their belief, noisily or subtly, that their difficulties represent a unique kind of affliction that should not be and has somehow especially been visited upon them, or else upon their families, their tribe, their class, their nation, their race, or even their species, and not upon others. I know about this moaning because I have done my share. Life is a series of problems. Do we want to moan about them or solve them? Do we want to teach our children to solve them? Discipline is the basic set of tools we require to solve life's problems. Without discipline, we can solve nothing. With only some discipline, we can solve only some problems. And with total discipline, we can solve all problems. Excuse me. What makes life difficult is that the process of confronting and solving problems is a painful one. Problems, depending on their nature, evoke in us frustration or grief or sadness, loneliness, guilt, regret, anger, fear, anxiety, anguish, despair. These are uncomfortable feelings, often very uncomfortable, often as painful as any kind of physical pain, sometimes equaling the very worst kind of physical pain. Indeed, it is because of the pain of these events or conflicts that they engender in us all that we call them problems. And since life poses an endless series of problems, life is always difficult and is full of pain as well as joy. Yet in this whole process of meeting and solving problems, that life has its meaning. Problems are the cutting edge that distinguishes between success and failure. Problems call forth courage, our wisdom. Indeed, they create our courage and our wisdom. It is only because of problems that we grow mentally and spiritually. When we desire to encourage the growth of the human spirit, we challenge and encourage the human capacity to solve problems. Just as in school, we deliberately set problems for our children to solve. It is through the pain of confronting and resolving problems that we learn. As Benjamin Franklin said, those things that hurt instruct. It is for this reason that wise people learn not to dread, but actually to welcome problems and actually to welcome the pain of problems. Most of us are not so wise. Fearing the pain involved, almost all of us, to a greater or lesser degree, attempt to avoid problems. We procrastinate, hoping that they'll go away. We ignore them, forget them, pretend they don't exist. We even take drugs to assist us in ignoring them, and so that by deadening ourselves to the pain, we can forget the problems that cause the pain. We attempt to skirt around problems rather than meet them head on, and we attempt to get out rather than to suffer through them. Therefore, let us inculcate in ourselves and in our children the means of achieving mental and spiritual health. By this, I mean, let us teach ourselves and our children the necessity for suffering and the value thereof, the need to face problems directly and to experience the pain involved. I've stated that discipline is the basic set of tools we require to solve life problems. It will become clear that these tools are techniques of suffering, by means by which we experience the pain of problems in such a way as to work through them and solve them successfully, learning and growing in the process. When we teach ourselves and our children discipline, we are teaching them and ourselves how to suffer and how to grow. What are these tools and the techniques of suffering, these means of experiencing the pain of problems constructively that I call discipline? There are 4: delay of gratification, acceptance of responsibility, dedication to truth, and balancing. As will be evident, these are not complex tools whose applications demand extensive training. To the contrary, they are simple tools, and almost all children are adept in their use by the age of 10. Yet presidents and kings will often forget to use them, to their own downfall. The problems lie not in the complexity of these tools, but in the will to use them, for they are tools with which the pain is confronted rather than avoided. And if one seeks to avoid legitimate suffering, then one will avoid the use of these tools. The first, delay of gratification. Not too long ago, a 30-year-old financial analyst was complaining to me over a period of months about her tendency to procrastinate at her job. We had worked through her feelings about her employers and how they relate to her feelings about authority in general, and to her parents especially. We examined her attitudes toward work and success and how they related to her marriage, her sexual identity, her desire to compete with her husband, and her fears of such competition. Yet despite all of this standard and painstaking psychological work, she continued to procrastinate as much as ever. Finally, one day, we dared to look at the obvious. "Do you like cake?" I asked her. She replied that she did. "Which part of the cake do you like better?" I went on, "the cake or the frosting?" "Oh, the frosting," she responded enthusiastically. "And how do you eat a piece of cake?" I inquired, feeling that I must be the most inane psychiatrist that ever lived. "I eat the frosting first, of course," she replied. From her cake-eating habits, we then went on to examine her work habits, and was to be expected, we discovered that on any given day, she would devote the first hour to the more gratifying half of her work, and the remaining 6 hours to getting around to the more objectionable remainder. I suggested that if she were to force herself to accomplish the unpleasant part of her job during the first hour, she would then be free to enjoy the other 6. It seemed to me, I said, that 1 hour of pain followed by 6 of pleasure was preferable to 1 hour of pleasure followed by 6 hours of pain. She agreed, and being basically a person of strong will, she no longer procrastinates. Delaying gratification is a process of scheduling pain and pleasure of life in such a way as to enhance the pleasure by meeting and experience the pain first and getting it over with. It is the only decent way to live. This tool of processing or scheduling is learned by most children quite early in life, sometimes as early as age 5. For instance, occasionally a 5-year-old, when playing a game with a companion, will suggest that the companion take the first turn so that the child may enjoy their turn later. At age 6, children may start eating their cake first and the frosting last. And throughout grammar school, this early capacity to delay gratification is daily exercised, particularly through the performance of homework. By the age of 12, some children are already able to sit down on occasion without any parental prompting and complete their homework before they watch television. And by the age of 15 or 16, such behavior is expected of the adolescent and is considered normal. It becomes clear to their educators at this age, however, that a substantial number of adolescents fall short of this norm. But why is this? Why do a majority develop this capacity to delay gratification, while a substantial minority fail to develop this capacity? The answer is not absolutely scientifically known. The role of genetic factors is unclear. The variables cannot be sufficiently controlled for scientific proof, but most of the signs rather clearly point to the quality of parenting as the determinant. It is not that the homes of these unself-disciplined children are lacking in parental discipline of a sort. More often than not, these children are punished frequently and severely throughout their childhood, slapped, punched, kicked, beaten, and whipped by their parents for even minor infractions. But this discipline is meaningless. because it is undisciplined discipline. One reason that it is meaningless is that the parents themselves are undisciplined and therefore serve as undisciplined role models for their children. They are do as I say, not as I do parents. Since we do not have the benefit of comparison when we are young, our parents are godlike figures to our childish eyes. When parents do things a certain way, it seems to the young child the way to do them, the way they should be done. If a child sees their parents day in and out behaving with self-discipline, restraint, dignity, and a capacity to order their own lives, then the child will come to feel in the deepest fibers of their being that this is the way to live. If a child sees in their parents day in and day out living without self-restraint or self-discipline, then they will come in the deepest fiber of their being to believe that that is the way to live. Yet even more important than role modeling is love. For even in chaotic and disordered homes, genuine love is occasionally present. And from such homes, many may come self-disciplined children, and not infrequently parents who are professional people, doctors, lawyers, club women, and philanthropists who lead lives of strict orderliness and decorum, but yet lack love, send children into the world who are as undisciplined and destructive and disorganized as any child from an impoverished and chaotic home. Ultimately, love is everything. The mystery of love will be examined in later portions of this work, not today. Yet for the sake of coherency, it may be helpful to make a brief but limited mention of it and its relationship to discipline at this point. We cannot solve life's problems except by solving them. This statement may seem ideologically tautological or self-evident, yet it is seemingly beyond the comprehension of much of the human race. This is because we must accept responsibility for a problem before we can solve it. We cannot solve a problem by saying, it's not my problem. We cannot solve a problem by hoping that someone else will solve it for us. I can solve a problem only when I say, this is my problem and it's up to me to solve it. But many, so many, seek to avoid the pain of their problems by saying to themselves, this problem was caused me by other people or by societal circumstances beyond my control, and therefore it is up to other people or society to solve this problem for me. It's not really my personal problem. The extent to which people will go psychologically to avoid assuming responsibility for personal problems, while always sad, is sometimes almost ludicrous. A career sergeant in the army, stationed in Okinawa and in serious trouble because of his excessive drinking, was referred to psychiatric evaluation and, if possible, assistance. He denied that he was an alcoholic or even that his use of alcohol was a personal problem, saying, there's nothing else to do in the evenings in Okinawa except drink. Do you like to read? I said. Oh yes, I like to read, sure. Then why don't you read in the evening instead of drinking? It's too noisy to read in the barracks. Well then, why don't you go to the library? The library is too far away. Is the library farther away than the bar that you go to? Well, I'm not much of a reader. That's not where my interests lie. Do you like to fish? I then inquired. Sure, I love to fish. Why not go fishing instead of drinking? Because I have to work all day long. Can't you go fishing at night? No, there isn't any fishing in Okinawa. But there is, I said. I know several organizations that fish at night. Would you like me to put them in contact with you? Well, I don't really like to fish. What I hear you saying, I clarified, is that there are other things to do in Okinawa except drink, but the thing you like to do most in Okinawa is drink. Yeah, I guess so. But your drinking is getting you in trouble, so you're faced with a real problem then, aren't you? Well, this damn island would drive anyone to drink. I kept trying for a while, but the sergeant was not the least bit interested in seeing his drinking as a personal problem for which he could solve either with or without help, and I regretfully told his commander that he was not amenable to assistance. His drinking continued, and he was separated from the service mid-career. A young wife, also in Okinawa, cut her wrist lightly with a razor blade that was bought and was brought to the emergency room. When I saw her, I asked her why she had done this to herself. Well, to kill myself, of course. And why do you want to kill yourself? I can't stand it on this dumb island. You have to send me back to the States. I'm going to kill myself if I have to stay here any longer. What is it about living in Okinawa that is so painful to you? I asked. She began to cry in a whining sort of way. I don't have any friends here, and I'm all alone all the time. That is too bad. How come you haven't been able to make any friends? Because I have to live in a stupid Okinawan housing area, and none of my neighbors speak English. Well, why don't you drive to the American housing or to the wife's club during the day so you can make some friends? Because my husband has to drive the car to work. Can't you drive to work since you're alone and bored all day, I asked. No, it's a stick shift car, and I don't know how to drive a stick shift car. It's an automatic. Well, why don't you learn how to drive a stick shift car? And she glared at me. On these roads, you must be crazy. Dedication to reality. The third tool of discipline or technique of dealing with the pain of problem solving, which must be continually employed in our daily lives to be healthy if our spirits are to grow, is dedication to the truth. Superficially, this should be obvious, for truth is reality. That which is false is unreal. The more clearly we see the reality of the world, the better equipped we are to deal with the world. The less clearly we see the reality of the world, the more our minds are befuddled by falsehoods, misperceptions, and illusions, the less we are able to determine the correct courses of action and make wise decisions. Our view of reality is like a map which we must use to negotiate the terrain of life. If the map is true and accurate, we will generally know where we are. And if we have decided where we want to go, we will generally know how to get there. If the map is false and inaccurate, we will generally be lost. While this is obvious, it is something that most people, to a greater or lesser degree, choose to ignore. They ignore it because our route to reality is not easy. First of all, we are not born with maps. We have to make them, and making requires effort. The more effort we make to appreciate and perceive reality, the larger and more accurate our maps will be. But many do not want to make this effort. Some stop making it by the end of adolescence. Their maps are small and sketchy. Their view of the world is narrow and misleading. By the end of middle age, most people have given up the effort entirely. They feel certain that their maps are complete and that their Weltanschauung is correct, indeed, even sacrosanct. They are no longer interested in new information. It is if they are tired. Only relative fortunate few continue until the moment of their death, exploring the mystery of reality, ever enlarging and refining and redefining their understanding of the world and what is true. But the biggest problem of map making is not that we have to start from scratch, but that if our maps are to be accurate, we have to continually revise them. The world is constantly changing. Glaciers come and go. Cultures come and go. There is too little technology. There is too much technology. Even more dramatically, the vantage point from which we view the world is constantly and quite rapidly changing. When we are children, we are dependent, powerless, and as adults, we may be powerful, yet in illness and in infirmed old age, we may become powerless and dependent yet again. When we have children to care for, the world looks very different than when we have none. And when we are raising infants, the world seems very different than when we are raising adolescents. When we are poor, the world looks very different than when we are rich. When we are daily bombarded with new information as to the nature of reality, if we are to incorporate this information, we must continually revise our maps. And sometimes when new information has accumulated, we must make very major revisions. This process of making revisions, particularly major revisions, is painful, sometimes excruciatingly painful. And herein lies a major source of the many ills of mankind. What happens when one has been striving long and hard to develop a working view of the world, a seemingly useful and workable map that is then confronted with new information that suggests that your view is wrong and that the map needs to be redrawn? The painful effort required seems frightening and almost overwhelming. What we do more often than not, usually unconsciously, is to ignore the new information. And often this act of ignoring is much more than passive. We denounce new information as false, dangerous, heretical, the work of the devil. We may actually crusade against it, even make an attempt to manipulate the world as to conform to our view of reality, rather than trying to change our map. An individual may try to destroy the new reality. And sadly, such a person may expend much more energy ultimately defending an outmoded view of the world than would have been required to revise and correct their map in the first place. Which brings us to our final element, balancing. By this time, I hope it is clear that the exercise of discipline is not only a demanding and a complex task requiring both flexibility and judgment. Courageous people must continuously push themselves to be completely honest yet must also possess the capacity to withhold the whole truth when appropriate. To be free people, we must totally assume responsibility for ourselves, but in doing so, we must possess the capacity to reject responsibility that is not truly ours. To be organized and efficient, to live wisely, we must delay gratification and keep our eye on the future, and yet to live joyously, we must also possess the capacity, when it's not destructive, to live in the present and act spontaneously. In other words, discipline itself must be disciplined. This type of discipline required to discipline discipline is what I call balancing, and it is the fourth and final type which I'd like to discuss here. Balancing is the discipline that gives us flexibility. Extraordinary flexibility is required for successful living in all spheres of activity, but to use an example, let us consider the matter of anger as an expression. Anger is an emotion bred into us and into lesser evolved organisms by countless generations of evolution in order that our survival may be encouraged. We experience anger whenever we perceive another organism attempting to encroach upon our geographical or psychological territory, or trying, one way or another, to put us down. It leads us to fight back. Without our anger, we would indeed be continually stepped on until we are totally squashed and exterminated. Only with anger can we survive, and yet, more often than not, when we initially perceive others as attempting to encroach on us, we realize upon closer examination that that's not what they intended to do at all. Or even when we determine that people are truly intending to encroach on us, we may realize that for one reason or another, it's not in our best interest to respond with that imposition with anger. Thus, it is necessary that the higher centers of our brain, judgment, be able to regulate and modulate the lower centers, the emotion. To function successfully in our complex world, it is necessary for us to possess the capacity not only to express our anger, but also to not express it. Moreover, we must possess the capacity to express our anger in different ways, and also how to most appropriately match the right time with the right style of expression. To handle our anger with full adequacy and competence, an elaborate, flexible response system is required. It is no wonder then that to learn to handle our anger is a complex task which usually cannot be completed before adulthood or even midlife, and is often never completed. To a greater or lesser degree, all people suffer from inadequacies of the flexibility of their response system. Mature mental health demands that an extraordinary capacity to be flexible and continually restrike a delicate balance between conflicting needs, goals, duties, responsibilities, direction, etc. The essence of this discipline of balancing is giving up. I remember being first taught this one summer morning in my 9th year. I'd recently learned to ride a bike and was joyously exploring the dimensions of my new skill. About a mile from our house down the road, went down to a steep hill and turned sharply at the bottom. Coasting down the hill on my bike that morning, I felt my gathering speed to be ecstatic. To give up this ecstasy would be to, by applying the brakes, seem to be an absurd self-punishment. So I resolved to simultaneously retain my speed and negotiate the turn at the bottom. My ecstasy ended seconds later when I was propelled a dozen feet off the road into the woods. I was badly scratched and bleeding, and the front of my new bike was twisted beyond use from the impact against a tree. I had lost my balance. Balancing is a discipline precisely because the act of giving something up is painful. In this instance, I had been unwilling to suffer the pain of giving up my ecstatic speed in the interest of maintaining my balance, literally around the corner. I learned, however, that the loss of balance is ultimately more painful than the giving up required to maintain balance. In one way or another, it is a lesson I've continually had to relearn throughout my life, as must everyone, for as we negotiate the curves and corners of our lives, we must continually give up parts of ourselves. The only alternative to this giving up is to not travel at all on the journey of life. It may seem strange, but most people choose this alternative and elect not continue with their life's journeys, to stop short by some distance in order to avoid the pain of giving up a part of themselves. If it does seem strange, it is because you do not understand the depth of the pain that may be involved. In its major forms, giving up is the most painful of human experiences. Thus, I have been talking about minor forms of giving up. giving up speed or the luxury of spontaneous anger or the safety of withheld anger or the neatness of a thank you note. Let me turn now to the giving up of personal traits, well-established patterns of behavior, ideologies, and even whole lifestyles. These are the major forms of giving up that are required if one is to travel very far on the journey of life. One night, I decided to spend some free time building a happier and closer relationship with my 14-year-old daughter. For several weeks, she had been urging me to play chess with her, and so I suggested a game. It was a school night, however, and at 9 o'clock, my daughter asked if I could hurry up my moves. I know her to be rigidly disciplined in her sleeping habits, and so it seemed to me that she ought to be able to give up some of this rigidity. I told her, "Come on, you can go to bed a little later for once. You shouldn't start games that you can't finish. We're having fun." We played on for another 15 minutes, during which time she became visibly discomforted. Finally, she pleaded, "Please, Dad, hurry up your moves." "No, goddammit," I replied. "Chess is a serious game. If you're going to play it well, you're going to play it slowly. If you don't want to play it seriously, you may as well not play at all." And so, with her feeling miserable, we continued for another 10 minutes, until suddenly, my daughter burst into tears, yelling that she conceded the stupid game and ran weeping up the stairs. Immediately, I felt as if I were 9 years old again, laying bleeding in the bushes by the side of the road next to my bike. Clearly, I had made a mistake. Clearly, I had failed to negotiate a turn in the road. But what had gone wrong? Well, the answer was obvious, but I did not want to see the answer. And so it took me 2 hours to wade through the pain of accepting the fact that I had botched the evening by allowing my desire to win a chess game become more important than my desire to build a relationship with my daughter. I was depressed in earnest then. How had I gotten so out of balance? Gradually, it dawned on me that my desire to win was too great and that I needed to give up some of this desire. Yet even this little giving up seemed impossible. All of my life, my desire to win had served me in good stead. For this, I had won many things. How was it possible to play chess without wanting to win? I had never been comfortable doing things unenthusiastically. How could I be conceivably play chess enthusiastically, but not seriously? Yet somehow I had to change, for I knew that my enthusiasm, my competitiveness, and my seriousness were a part of a behavioral pattern that was working against and would continue to work against connecting me with my children. And that if I were not able to modify this pattern, then there would be other times of unnecessary tears and bitterness, and my depression continued. My depression is now over. I've given up part of my desire to win at games. That part of me is gone now. It died. I had to die, and I killed it. I killed it with my desire to win at parenting. When I was a child, my desire to win at games served me well, and as a parent, I recognized that it got in my way, and so it had to go. The times have changed, and to move with them, I had to give up. I do not miss it, and I thought I would, but I do not. Thank you. Our closing hymn this morning is "I've Got Peace Like a River." Those of you who are here in the sanctuary may sit back, close your eyes, and listen quietly.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul, in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul, in my soul. I've got love
Our benediction is May You Be Changed by Emily Richards. May you leave this time together changed. May the promises you have made to yourself about who you want to be feel closer to the reality of who you are right now. May you share that feeling of transformation wherever you go. May it spread into every word, deed, thought, and interaction until we are all changed, transformed, and transforming together, becoming our better selves. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Alec, for sharing your valuable time and insights with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. If willing and able, we are going to have a 10 to 15-minute discussion with Alec following the service. Please be aware this will be included on the video that is posted. Thank you.
And do we have coffee hour outside for those who would like to dismiss themselves and we get some coffee instead? Great. Yeah, if anyone would like to share their thoughts on our book reading today, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And that's okay if we're done too.
I don't know. One of the things that you can do a little bit when you've got, say, for example, a heavy disparity like he had with his daughter in terms of skill with the chess, is maybe change the conditions of the game just a bit. For example, you might say to the daughter, if you can get a couple of your pawns moved all the way across the board, considering the fact that I've been doing this for longer than you, you might call that your win. Or you might say, I'm going to play without a couple of rooks because I've got an advantage on you. And so that discipline is countered by the fact that there is a spirit of play going on about it. And then that way, hopefully it can be presented in such a way that the kid doesn't feel like, oh, he beat me and he beat me without rooks. Yeah, fine. Now I really feel stupid. But if you can sit there and change the conditions into a dance, maybe even do something a little odd and say, tell you what, I'm going to let you replace 2 of those pawns with a couple of extra knights or a couple of extra bishops. Do something weird which will challenge you. And at the same time, make it so that things aren't so classical. That also would be helpful in terms of defeating there will be order and there will be execution. And thus, the kid is suffering somewhat because there's just too much experience to make a difference. Another thing might be to give the kid a quick load and say, it's hard to remember the pieces, but here's a little, take the board apart and say, this is a pin, this is a sacrifice. This is a dirty trick I'm playing because see this bishop here is set up to pop you if you take the bait. And so again, you can sit there and bring that into the discipline of the game by sort of pre-setting them to do certain things. Just thoughts for what happens when there's a disparity, because we don't always start at the same time or the same place.
That does sound like perhaps a good idea for balancing the playing field with if you're playing against someone who is lower skilled. But it also seems to me like this is one way that perhaps this is a suggestion, so that way perhaps Morgan would be able to continue playing with his daughter without having to give up his competitiveness. But isn't that just another way of avoiding the pain of having to give up that part of himself?
I think that by going after the classic thing we do sometimes is to fight for the win. The unclassic thing to do is to, he obviously has to throttle back at the design.
Can you come back because,
Yeah.
and remember to speak directly into the microphone.
He definitely has to throttle back no matter what on that particular case. But the classic thing about the spirit of game is the idea of a winning game is not always a game that there's this incredible precision and then the blast and the hook and the play. Essentially, there needs to be a spirit of fun pumped in there. There also game theory, as opposed to the idea of living in your life, is you don't want to have such an advantage that your fellow man is completely cramped and blocked out. There are people out there who, if I started with $100 and then with zero, by the end of the year, they will have $100 and I will not. If the game is called squeeze the other guy out of existence, then the act of joy is taken away and discipline is no longer a feeding element to the good life. But if I sit there and say, okay, I won $10 off you, let's go grab a couple of sub sandwiches. Then that way you have a spirit of play and interaction, which can be fueling how we interact.
Thank you, Bill.
Have you heard of the prisoner's dilemma?
Yes, the prisoner's dilemma, a situation where it seems like only if two prisoners cooperate do they get a better deal. And so it seems when you look at on like a small level, it seems like
If you cooperate, it's more beneficial than if it's every man for himself.
Exactly. But it turns out that when you then try to zoom out and look at that bigger picture, suddenly it seems like it's like instead of looking for a local minimum, just how to best serve you personally, suddenly when you look for that global minimum, the thing that really or the global maximum in that case, the thing that really maximizes it for everybody, your personal maximum also goes up.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
John Nash.
Yeah, John Nash, very intelligent mathematician. Yeah. Good movie too. Beautiful Mind. Yeah. Grace, please.
So there's a martial arts philosophy in Japan that says learn the rules, master the rules, and then forget the rules. So when you were talking about balance, I think that comes into play where like you can't be so rigid with the rules that you can't improvise to meet the challenges that occur in each situation. I had another question, Alec. How old were you when you read this book?
I was 16 or 17 when I picked up this book. That's when the UUs at my church that I grew up in do TAG, which is transformation, affirmation, and graduation, which is sort of coming of age for UUs, where culminating in a process where I had to write a belief statement, which is what it sounds like. I had to write out, since we're not told what to believe in this church, I had to decide that for myself. And part of coming of age for a UU means starting your spiritual journey and finding where you are on that path.
I found that like the right book given at the right time in your development is like so transformative because it tells you so many things that you need to hear at the moment. And another question I had for you was there any part of the UU journey that you were raised in that you had challenges with, that you questioned? Or was it basically pretty easy to accept?
So I would say that, so in line with our service today, none of those changes were easy to accept. There are definitely some things, especially the ideas about justice and the goal of world community, the use of the democratic process, those three principles in particular. It took a long time for me to sit with those as we discussed, it's always a painful process to really confront those things about yourself and to truly go on that process of growth is a painful one.
Thank you.
And also, as what you were just a quick comment, what you were saying about martial arts is also how I feel about jazz. And what I've heard about, Ren, Ren also has a comment, so I'm just gonna read Ren's comment because it's exactly what I was thinking. Great job, Ren. It's like this in art too, says Ren. For things like jazz or improvisational painting, it can seem at first glance to be random and easy, but the artist has to learn all the time the rules of the art before they can learn how to break them. Precisely, you need to know how to play the jazz before you can break the rules and make some real jazz. Yeah,
I just want to say, I just want to say that this would have been a great book for me to have gotten at an early age, as you did. I'm sorry I didn't, but I can benefit from what I learned just right here. And I really appreciate it. There's a lot of great guidelines in there. I feel I can feel that I can apply to my life. So thank you.
yes, the first time I reread this book, I was thinking, is this still going to be good, or is this only valuable to a teenager? Is this only information that a teenager needs to hear? But I found that it was still directly relevant to the problems that I was experiencing. And now when I was rereading it for this service, every passage is relevant to the problems I'm facing right now. I think we're almost out of time, so this will be the last question or comment.
I'm not quite sure whether this would be question or comment, but I think the tricky part is that some words get emotionally loaded without meaning to. And discipline is another translation. When I was younger, I hadn't realized it, but my mom had an allergy to newsprint and she dearly loved reading. So we would always, the game plan would tend to be towards, and the allergy got worse as she got older. She didn't realize she had it. So the idea was, okay, you kids clean the house and then we'll jump into the car and we'll go out and explore and see our beautiful Colorado where we lived. And she would get tired due to the newsprint allergy because she'd read on the couch and the stuff would be coming right into her face. And I think it may have added to her early passing away. So I developed a wrong idea that says discipline. Discipline is another way of saying the check is in the mail when it isn't. I didn't trust discipline after that. I thought discipline is this thing we try to do, and then there's always something that comes up and gets in the way and makes you have a not as good as it could have been moment. So when I first had a chance to finally live by myself, oh Lord, really, really sloppy. That shifted over into being a hoarder, which I believe I'm recovering from now, but I still have it rise up a little bit. But the very word discipline sometimes, if you're not careful, can translate into, I am going to state that there is a trade-off, and there isn't one. I'm not going to treat you honestly, honor your work, honor your time, honor your hopes and dreams. And I think that in that sense, that you being able to go through that and realizing that discipline has honorable and honest payoffs is a very important thing, and to count yourself, if not fortunate, well, at least I stepped I stepped off the road on that one. It didn't help me. I am glad that discipline works more for you and for any of the rest of you. And like I say, if you can keep discipline from looking like the game is rigged and I'm in control and I'm giving you a line of malarkey before I rip you off, that's huge.
Yes, and we often think about discipline as just being the willingness to sit down and work on something, perhaps. But discipline is really the entire process through which you solve that problem. The process by which you do your work is the discipline. Thank you. I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you for sticking around for the Q&A. Thank you. And please join us for the remainder of the coffee hour.